Dr. John Edeen. You're down in San Antonio, Texas, Doctors for Responsible Gun Ownership, and not only that, but a really good, close personal friend of mine as well, who you also did my guest Dr. John Edeen, also did a segment with our good friend Tom Gresham on the legendary Gun Talk radio show today. John, welcome to the program. I know it's not snowing in San Antonio, but it started here. You were asking about the weather earlier, so there it is. How are you, brother?
I'm doing pretty good. In fact, it's kind of seasonal temperate. It's in the 60s here today. A little bit of rain off and on, which is, of course, we always need in South Texas. But it's spring break, and I've been taking care of a lot of spring breaks this weekend. I was on call, and so we're taking care of all the broken kids today.
I should point out that Dr. Edeen is a pediatric orthopedic surgeon. So when I say doctor, you are a pediatric orthopedic surgeon. I got that right, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, I knew that, but I kind of had to throw that in there, okay? Hey, Dr. John, so much to talk with you about. I've got you for these two segments. The second half of the hour, we've got the self-defense attorney calling back in. So I want to kind of move quickly with you. One of the things, we have about three things we wanted to talk with you about. Docs versus Glocks, that's one of them. That's making news right now. Want to get your opinion on that and what that means. We'll go there in just a second. But before we do that, there was an attack on a hospital in Kabul. Did you want to go there for just a couple of minutes?
Yeah, sure. And this is something that I've written about in USCCA magazine.
Concealed Carry magazine.
In USCCA Concealed Carry magazine. And it was an article about the terrorist attack risk against hospitals. And basically what happened was, as far as they could tell, there were 4 gunmen disguised as doctors or medics in white coats. There was apparently an ambulance that was supposedly delivering patients, which blew up, and then doctors inside the hospital, quote-unquote doctors inside the hospital in white coats, started firing, rifles. They killed 30 people, mostly civilians, a few doctors, and over 60 wounded. There were grenades. And the interesting thing, they were able to fight off the Afghan guards and special forces for several hours. That means they had control of this hospital for several hours, and they were able to do what they wanted to while they were there. And so to me, this looks like a dry run, or, it's just a proof of concept for stuff that has a potential to happen here in the United States.
Okay, let me stop you, Doctor, for just a second.
Sure.
The reason I am is because I want to point out to my listeners around the country that Dr. Edeen has been talking about this, lecturing about this, talking to his colleagues about this, about the potential for this. Hospitals are soft targets in this country. Let's be real here. Most of them across the country, correct me if I'm wrong, John, are gun-free zones, correct?
Absolutely. In fact,
a
lot of them are guarded by people who are not armed. So, they have guys with tasers and most hospitals are pretty large structures. They're very difficult to defend once they're taken. To take back once they're taken, because they have long hallways and there's plenty of targets. And, everybody's a potential victim. If you just had surgery, you can't run, you can't hide, and you can't fight. So what are you going to do? You're a victim. Okay. So this is the kind of stuff. I've been a proponent of hospital staff being able to arm themselves, concealed carriers, and getting training, kind of like the FASTER program, so that we have trained, armed hospital staff at the scene. So when something like this happens, there's a way to buy time to allow the responders to get there, the SWAT teams and the guys that can have the heavy weapons and the armor and all that kind of stuff to stop this stuff. So this is really the thing that really worries me. This is what I've been talking about now for almost 4 years, and that this is a real concern of mine, and that we really need to be looking at this very hard.
John, why don't we see any of this talk about hospitals as soft targets in the news? Maybe we do from time to time. I'm up on this. This is my bag. I search for this stuff every day. I research it all the time. I might find something. But for the average headline surfer who's getting up in the morning, flipping on the news, getting the headlines, watching the evening news at night with their dinner, whatever the case may be, and then hopefully turning the crap off because the 24-hour news cycle is just filling Americans' heads full of a bunch of garbage. So I hope they're only getting their news, at certain times because they can go where they need to get it during the day. But we don't see this stuff. Very rarely when we talk about I'm getting worried, brother. I'm thinking, you know what? People are starting to get complacent again, and that's what the enemies are looking for. Hospitals, man, until I started talking with you, had never given it the thought that I have been recently. Why don't we see it?
Well, I think because it doesn't fit their narrative. They want to keep it, quiet. They don't want, to bring people's attention to the fact that they are a sitting duck and that they're a target. And, at the Gun Rights Policy Conference, I talked about the issue of liability reform, and that hospitals, until there's a mass attack like this, okay, where multiple people are injured or killed, and there's a multi-million-dollar lawsuit, are going to say, you know what, the signs are enough. Okay, the attorneys tell me, hey, you're covered, you got the signs, you're A-okay. Until something like this happens in a United States hospital, the attorneys are going to be advising the corporations, and that's what hospitals are. They're big corporations. Oh, you're good. Don't worry about it. You're covered. You've done your due diligence, so to speak. Well, we know that that's not the case, not in this day and age, in the age of terrorism. So, this is something
scary,
you may
John.
need to talk to your hospital administrators about. What are you doing for real security? Why aren't people, going through metal detectors? Why aren't we, searching bags? Why aren't we doing all this? The problem is,
well, they'll tell you it's cost, John. They're going to tell you that it's cost and everything else. They don't have the funds to do it. Money's tight as it is already, and of course, with the healthcare system, being a little bit messed up right now because of Obamacare and everything else, overruns. It's just not. That's the excuse you're going to get. Here's what concerns me. We're talking about a hospital in Kabul, Afghanistan, for crying out loud, and many people. And I have to admit, I'm going to be honest with you. I'm guilty of this too. As you're perusing through the news, you see the story of the overturned bus and 20 people dead, and your eyes go right to it, and you find out it's in Pakistan, and you flip the page, you don't even read it. Okay?
Right.
That's what's happening here when people see these stories. It's Kabul, Afghanistan. Well, that's where they're coming from, and these are test runs. Take a look what happened prior to 9/11. So we need to be very, very concerned about this. At a shopping mall, when we see these soft targets, or in a Mumbai-style India attack, if we see that in a crowded, like we saw in Paris, many people were able to save themselves by getting up and running away. In a hospital, you can't do that. The
right.
body
again,
count will rack up.
Schools are another example. The attack in Russia, where they massacred several hundred people, and that was training for stuff that's going to happen here.
Lieutenant Colonel Grossman predicted Newtown on my radio program on this very show 6 months before it happened, not by the school name, but he predicted exactly what would occur. And gosh darn it, if it didn't happen, about 6 months later, he predicted it in July, and it happened in June or July, and it happened in, of course, December back in 2012. So very, very scary stuff, John. I appreciate you bringing that up and opening people's minds to it. Because I'll tell you this. There's no such thing as a hospital guarded by anybody if they're not carrying firearms. They're not guarding anything. They are not security if they don't have the ability to defend you with a tool known as a firearm. They're not. Their mace and their stun guns aren't going to do the trick. They have to be guarding that facility with firearms. It's as simple as that. John, when we come back, Docs v. Glocks. Oh, no, what does that mean? Doctors versus Glocks on Armed American Radio's monster broadcast from 1000 Freedom Way, the new world headquarters of the USCCA. I'll be right back with Dr. John Edeen.
Here's the host of Armed American Radio, Mark Walters.
On 1000 Freedom Way. Wow, man, the fastest hours of radio just keep on going. I got to thinking about that during the break, security. Well, how do you call somebody or something security that's unarmed? You got a bunch of Paul Blart mall cops running around with a radio. They can't stop anything. That's not security. And if you're concerned about that, speak up and say something. Hey, I don't feel safe here. Why is this a gun-free zone? Gun-free zones are killing zones. Gun-free zones are murder zones. Gun-free zones are not safety zones. Want to find out how drug-free a school is? Ask your high school kid where they can find drugs. On the other side of the sign that says, this is a drug-free school. Yeah, right. Man, I got to tell you, it's enough to anger you. Dr. John Edeen, welcome back to the show, brother. Drug-free, gun-free. Give me a break.
It's a joke. You're right.
It angers you to sit here and think about it during the... It is fantasy land. It's ridiculous. Okay, Dr. John, we got you for one more segment. We've got an attorney coming in the next half of the hour to wrap up with us. Docs v. Glocks. I guess we should start with this. The Florida Supreme Court upheld the right, if you will, of doctors to ask their patients about firearms, that it's not an infringement, that it doesn't violate anything. Take it from there. As a doctor, as someone in private practice, I call you during the week and, hey, Mark, I got to run. I got 20 kids I'm seeing today. You deal with this for a living every single day. What do I, as a patient, need to know about Docs versus Glocks, and tell us what it is?
Okay, well, first of all, it wasn't Florida Supreme Court. It was the 11th Circuit.
The 11th Circuit, excuse me. You're right. It was the 11th Circuit. Thank you for the correction. Go ahead.
So that affects more than just the state of Florida. It's the entire 11th Circuit. And so the only way this thing's going to get overturned is the Supreme Court. So it's at that level at this point. But basically what this does is it overturns the majority of the Firearms Owners Privacy Act of 2011 in the state of Florida. And basically what that act said was that it forbade physicians from pressing patients to give up their firearms or otherwise propagandize using the doctor-patient relationship. It precluded routine documentation of gun ownership. However, it did not forbid asking when relevant to patient care whether there was a safety concern or somebody who was unstable had access to a gun, and it did not forbid doctors from providing general information about guns, whether they agreed, whether we as gun owners and pro-gun people agree with the position or not. The only provision that was upheld was the anti-discrimination position, and basically that says that gun owners cannot be treated differently simply because they are gun owners, and no patient can be turned away when he arrives for medical care because the doctor does not approve of his answer to the question of do you own a gun, or his non-answer to the question. So the only real victory in this is actually the anti-discrimination thing. The rest of this is a disaster.
How much of that is really a victory when we know that there are people out there that will act out on their political agenda over and above our own physical well-being? We know that to be the case.
Right. It is following a political agenda, and it's pushing the an anti-rights bias that's held in many of the organizations, the American Medical Association, American Academy of Pediatrics, American College of Surgeons, and unfortunately now even the American Academy of Orthopedic Surgeons in their most recent Journal of the American Academy of Orthopedic Surgery has come out with an article that talks about gunshot wounds in children, and it was published out of Yale University in New Haven. And of course, they're using the same demographics of children up to age 19, or some of them even 20. Well, we know those are gangbangers, and they're adults. So this is the kind of stuff that we're dealing with in the organized medicine. And DRGO, which is, of course, the organization that I belong to, Doctors for Responsible Gun Ownership, we actually participated in an amicus brief in this case and in some of the previous cases with the Second Amendment Foundation and the Citizens Committee for the Right to Keep and Bear Arms. And our attorney basically said that they ignored everything that we put in our brief. They just said what they wanted to say. They had a lot of, excellent points. It was like a 10-1 vote against us. And so the only person who actually picked up on this was the one dissenting vote. But the whole thing is basically what they're saying is the First Amendment right of a physician to say whatever they want and utilize the physician-patient relationship however they want to trumps the benefit of the patient. And then we get into the arguments. We've written some stuff in our on our website. David Kodra wrote a beautiful article that appeared in AmmoLand on February 22nd, and I suggest that all of your listeners take a look at that article. It's fantastic. He's really did a great synopsis But in that article, and we've talked about this before a few years ago, he has a form that you can bring to the doctor's office. It's the Firearms Safety Counseling Representation, Physician Qualification and Liability Form. And basically what it says is either A, I have read and been through the entire literature of firearm safety as well as all other relevant safety things in the home, such as lawn chemicals and lawnmowers and forks and needles and, pools, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Or I have absolutely no education at all in firearm safety, and I'm still counseling you anyway.
Doctor, it's important. It's important for me to mention this before we cut out at the bottom of this half hour and lose you here until the next appearance. I'll see if I can bring you back on latter part of the week. But it's important to mention this, that if you don't think this is a political agenda, you need only look at who's pushing it.
Oh, absolutely.
And that would be all of the Bloomberg organizations and every left-wing liberal organization in the country are pushing the stocks for Glocks. These are and if you don't think that that it's been politicized, when they tell you it's not, you need only look at the left-wing political groups that are, in fact, pushing this. Doctor, I've got to ask you this quickly. What business is it of yours if I own a handgun, with all due respect?
It's absolutely none of my business, and it's none of the government's business. This is a right that pre-existed the government of the United States. And so the government really has zero business in getting involved in this, but they keep trying to get their nose they've got their nose under the tent already. Now they're trying to get the head, neck, and the shoulders of the camel under the tent at this point, and we can't let them get away with it.
Doctor, when I first moved to Georgia from Florida, one of my kids were much younger than they are now. They were about 1 and 3 at the time, and I had a doctor ask me about that. I said, "Have a great day. Goodbye. I'm not doing business with you, and here's why." Okay, I think I told you that before when you were up visiting my house. But, hey, Doc, sure. I appreciate it very much, brother. I got to let you go. DRGO, where can people find it? Please give us a website real quick.
Yeah, it's drgo.us. We're also on Facebook under Doctors for Responsible Gun Ownership. We publish blog posts twice a week, and we have stuff on the Facebook page every day. And so please visit. It's a great source of information. And as the membership director, we want people to sign up.
All right, John, I got to stop you. Got to cut you. DRGO.us. Thank you, Dr. Edeen. Appreciate it.